you add all of this up and the fact that it doesn't seem like things are getting better in the Ukraine and Russia, which, silver already had some big pricing, had some big issues before that. Steve, are we at the break point in silver? I mean, have we passed the break point of no return here? Well, hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics on another very exciting day in the silver market. Now, this will be broadcast Wednesday morning, although we're recording on Tuesday in the midst of a volatile day. Silver and gold were soaring in the middle of the night. Then we're really soaring for about an hour or two into the trading session, then got spoofed down pretty good. I would say on regurgitation of old headlines, which basically seems to be the government's only plan at this point. While Joe Biden reassures the nation that he's got inflation and the oil supply under control. So I believe he said Santa Claus is going to deliver them early this year. So Americans and Canadians, fear not, your governmental leadership is on it. And joining me to dig into the silver market, the silver pricing, if it's getting any easier for silver companies to dig silver out of the ground on the supply side. I know Joe Biden will probably fix that too somehow, but just in case he doesn't, fortunately, we have a much better candidate on the line, Steve Cope of Silver Viper, a man who not actually has studied and knows things, but actually has done great things with his life, built companies, created jobs, returned investment for shareholders, all the great things that if we only had a president like Steve, what a planet it would be. So Steve, my vote for president of the galaxy. Welcome on in today. How are you, buddy?
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I'm not sure I want to be the president of the galaxy, but it is sad what you say, the world leaders that we do have. I guess all the people that are smart and educated decide they don't want to go into politics, probably for, I guess, a good reason, and we're stuck and left with what we have now.
Yeah, and Steve, you told me some real shocking political news that if Justin Trudeau actually, was anybody noticed that he's committed some rather abhorrent crimes in just the last weeks alone, let alone what he's done before that, that your boy Cynthia Freeland might be the one taking over. And I can't imagine what the poll would be: Steve Cope versus Cynthia Freeland. The Washington Generals would have a better chance than Cynthia on that one, but we will leave that aside. And Steve, why don't you just to kick it off, share any thoughts you have about silver, where we're seeing wild price volatility. Gold has just shot through $2,000, which I would think might be similar to what these government interventionists were fearing when silver was shooting through $30 and they had to have the plunge protection team meeting. Because Steve, you're aware, Ross Benham, member of Reagan's plunge protection team, him, Gary Gensler, Janet Yellen, and a Federal Reserve executive. So a lot happening. You're talking to investors, you're hunting for silver. Where do you see things, and what are you looking at today?
Well, I mean, it's the world is a crazy place right now for sure, and it's hard to read through all the BS that we see in the media and what's going on and what's out there and what's really happening. My mailbox, it's seeing these pawn shops and various, flyers popping in the mailbox right now and saying, give us all your gold, your spare jewelry, your silver, we'll buy anything, give your sterling silver, your old, silverware, anything. They're begging for the physical supply and trying to figure out any which way they can get it, which I haven't seen that for a very long time. But I've seen multiple flyers in the last couple of weeks on that front, which I thought was interesting. But from there, it's just I'm looking for silver to really spike right now, and you see gold over 2,000, and silver still is lagging behind. And silver normally outperforms gold on the way up, so I think it's just a loaded spring ready to go. And like you say, if we can push through that $30 number, I think that really, poises it for a massive breakout. But will the powers that be let it do it is the big question.
Well, that is the question. Although, Steve, since we're you brought up your mailbox. Was there any flyers in there from Joe Biden asking if you had any extra oil that he could pawn for? Because I mean, what you're describing, it at the same time people are scrambling for silver. I mean, I'm reading these headlines of, they're now he's trying to be nice to Venezuela to steal their oil again. I mean, here's another one. Putin decides to ban the export of products and raw materials outside the Russian Federation until December. I'm assuming Steve, how much do we have a lot of silver come from Russia? I know there's certainly a strong resource base. Is there how much silver do we actually get from out of Russia?
I don't know the exact number. I haven't flagged silver. I haven't heard silver being flagged as one that would be dramatically affected necessarily by Russia. I've seen palladium very much so in the PGM groups that is of major consequence that Russia wouldn't be shipping any of that out because again look at you need that stuff for catalytic converters and in cars and all this other stuff and we've already seen the backlog in the supply chain for stuff like that right now. I mean, I've seen people trying to order cars and they're being told they're not going to get delivery till 2024. Like it's absurd. So there's definitely a lot of materials and resources that are coming from Russia, and we've already felt it with regards to gas prices coming up. We just crossed $2 a liter here by my house yesterday, and with the move up in oil again today, I mean, I don't think it's going to be maybe a couple weeks if it keeps going up the way it is, and we're going to see $3 a liter, which for the Americans out there that see they're going up, we're the most expensive in Vancouver and all of North America. That would be like at $3, almost $12 a gallon. So it's a very dramatic, price that we're talking about. I did see that you could drive across to Point Roberts from Vancouver and not have to go through all the stuff with COVID and testing to come back because it's an isolated area. And guys, they were paying $1.40 a liter versus the $2, on this side of the border, which is kind of comical.
Well, I would agree. Although, Steve, now I'm not sure if the Federal Reserve or the folks at the CPI Institute, I don't know if they're obviously they don't count useless things like oil in their calculations anyway. And certainly converting to the metric system is beyond the capabilities of their computers' calculation processing. Yet it sounds like the inflation is going well past Jerome Powell's 2% mandate. I mean, we were already getting reports of 8-9% as it was. I mean, this is like, what are they going to what number for inflation are we going to get like for this month when the March number comes out? Are they going to actually tell us like inflation is like, oh no, it's only 9%, only went up a basis point last month? I mean,
well, yeah, I mean, again, I always laugh at the U.S. unemployment numbers, U.S. inflation numbers, with how manipulated they are. But I mean, any sane person can walk into a grocery store right now or go to a gas station, and it's exponentially growing day by day what the cost is, and it's going to get worse. I mean, you start factoring in these fuel costs and what it's going to cost to ship the product, and then on top of that, the supply issues with a lot of the product that we get from Russia or get from other parts that you can't get now. And is it 8-9%? Is it 8-9% per week? Is it like, I don't know, is it more than that? It's going up, quite rapidly, and certainly outpacing any of these numbers that you see posted on inflation. It's to a point here where if you see fuel go up by that much, you're going to see half the cars on the road in Vancouver. There's enough people that are living, day to day off their paychecks and the money they have, and they cannot afford to be spending an extra $100, at the pump every time they fill up. It's just not possible.
yeah, but it's not like they can carpool together because there's COVID.
Right. Well, that's going to be their choice, right? So, are they going to go
Well,
back
no,
to
it's
working
not their
from home,
choice
or
based
are
on.
they going to get cold? I mean, I think a lot of people here have had it anyways, but yeah, they're going to go back to piling into buses. I mean, a lot of them aren't willing to do that because the government and the media has done such a good job of terrifying them that they're going to get this horrible disease that seems to be like a cold under Omicron. So
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess the only part I disagree with, you said it's their choice, although obviously the Canadian government has taken away anybody's choice. But we'll leave that aside because Steve, yesterday talked with David Stein, Kuya Silver, and we were trying to figure out if input costs like oil and everything else are skyrocketing. What is it? Nickel. The nickel's going up so fast. They had to pull up. They Hunt brothered the nickel market. They stopped the trading of it. I saw one of the brokerages was saying you can only do closing orders. I believe it was wheat and maybe corn or soybeans. Wheat was one of them, but basically everything on the planet is soaring faster and than it was even a couple days or weeks ago. That's not going to make it easier for people to find silver at a time where the demand is greater than ever. I'm hearing, just on the different Telegram groups I'm in from, one bullion dealer like Miles Franklin, he sounds like he's pretty darn busy, and the other guy, I'm just hearing these reports. Hey, we're running out of stuff here. Let me phrase that carefully. Not that people are, well, I've heard anecdotal reports of some places, well, they stopped selling silver for a little bit. Maybe we'll call that the minority for now, but you add all of this up and the fact that it doesn't seem like things are getting better in the Ukraine and Russia, which, silver already had some big pricing, had some big issues before that. Steve, are we at the break point in silver? I mean, have we passed the break point of no return here?
I think there's a lot of things at play right now, and I do think we've passed the point of no return in a lot of ways with gold and silver. To me, the interesting one is what Russia's going to do with their currency, and China, but they'll work together. You've got the ruble right now has been obviously decimated and is worthless essentially. But here's a country that's been accumulating mass amounts of precious metals combined with China, and I think that's maybe their way out, and other people can do the math based on the ounces that they have, but they're coming out, and they have kind of already stated it, but they're gonna come out with a precious metals backed currency, and it'll when these prices are forced to skyrocket, and the way they'll go, and that's their way out of the disaster of what all these sanctions and everything have done to the their current currency.
Well, I appreciate you mentioning that, Steve, because I don't know exactly what they have planned, but that would make a bit more sense than just sit there and let everything get destroyed. And it seems to be a pretty strong plan that the U.S., outside of sending Joe Biden to say he doesn't like the color of Putin's suit, doesn't really have much defense against any of the other policies that are taking place. And at least to me, it's a sad day as an American seeing what has happened to this country over the past couple of years. Yet, do you think there's any connection to that headline that came out this morning that I don't recall which U.S. senator or congressman it was, but they were talking about now wanting to freeze Russia's access to gold? And I thought, whoa, hold on a second here. Now I think we're finding out what's really going on, because a couple of years ago, Ben Bernanke, the ex-Federal Reserve lying chairman, claimed that, he didn't understand gold. He didn't know anybody else who did either. So now all these people that don't understand gold, all of a sudden now they care about gold. And I wonder if now we're seeing the desperation come out and a lot of the truth revealed. What would you say about that?
I think that would be a strong possibility. And again, I don't think, what can they do to stop Russia now? I mean, they're doing all the sanctions, they're doing everything else they can. You're not going to stop Russia from getting it from China. China's not going to listen to the U.S. They're not going to do anything. They've stood right by Russia as their most. I saw the headline. They came out and said it's their most strategic and significant partner in the world now. They're going to work together, and those two have been the largest accumulators of gold over the last few years, certainly, if not longer. And I think they're not dumb. They've got a long-term plan in place, and we've been saying it for a long time that that's what's coming, is that China and Russia and these countries are going to come back with some form of a currency that's backed by precious metals, and they're going to take a shot at the US dollar as being the world currency.
Well, it seems like somebody else is thinking that, because here is from one of our fellow Arcadians. I think you've actually met him. His name is Michael. On Twitter, he's Mike Say 98. That's Mike MIKESAY 98. I'd like to say thank you to Michael A being part of our community, but he also tracks the sales at AppMex. And let's see, this just came in a couple minutes ago. As of 10 a.m., I'm assuming, I'm not sure which time zone that is, but sometime on Tuesday morning, he says, regarding sales at AppMex, silver is at 136% of the Tuesday average. That's at 10 a.m. So what they normally do on a Tuesday, they're already past that in the first couple hours. Gold at 123% of the Tuesday average. Outside of Ross Benham and the banks that are short that dump contracts, I have yet to hear of anyone who's saying, I want to get rid of my gold and silver here. I mean, what are people supposed to think? They got primed for all of the stuff that's going on now by seeing your boy Freeland shut down the Canadian. I mean, that was scary. If you donate to support a peaceful cause, we're gonna take your money. And whether they did it or not, or how there was another bluff, but just you keep doing these things. And it was like yesterday, I saw, the things had already been ratcheted up. And then there was like a new headline of Joe Biden saying, well, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, as his country's falling apart. Steve, this does it get the feeling like it's almost like one of those deals where the Rothschilds, it's starting to feel like someone knows what's going on out there. Someone is front running things, because now it's like things were already wild, but in the last 24 hours, it's escalated to, beyond, like, logical people would not respond like this unless there's another thing about to drop. That's what it's feeling like to me. What would you say there?
I agree. I mean, there's definitely things going on behind the scenes, and people obviously know a lot more of what's happening, in those groups, and what their plans are, and they're all going to profit from it. But it's scary. It's, as a Canadian, I've been so disappointed in my country over the last 2 years, and even more so over the last few months. It's been scary, and my wife and I have had conversations about our kids and where we want to be and where we want to live, and there's my wife, who never even would have considered leaving the Lower Mainland and moving away from her family, is she's maybe even more distraught than I am about things that are happening around in our world. So it's definitely escalating very quickly.
Yeah, I would say so. Although, fortunately, Steve, again, the power of silver. I might add, silver has risen 20 cents since we started this call.
I know,
So.
we're not. This isn't even live, and I feel like people are like channeling our energy and listening somehow. Like,
Well, there are, it's funny you mentioned that. There were times last year following Silver Squeeze, maybe February and March, where, there were a couple times we'd have a big audience and something big would happen, and then almost be like, man, are a lot of people watching this and actually doing something? Or, I've heard Eric Sprott watches the show, so maybe, he's like, wow, this is some wild stuff going on out there.
Well, he's been putting his money where his mouth
I
is the last week. He's been investing in a lot of companies again. Eric he goes through his waves, and he seems to be putting money into a lot of different names and financings right now.
Yeah, and I mean, not that Eric Sprott needs to watch my show to figure that out. I mean, he's doing just fine, obviously, but it's like, you imagine people like him, and who does he talk to? I mean, maybe not all of us are millionaires or billionaires just yet, but it's like, I've thought through it. I'm like, all right, Eric, he's one guy, and by all means, he does what he does, but I mean, he probably has friends, and knows other people, and as they're seeing these things, I mean, it's like, it's hard to see as someone who's rational saying, hey, I want to load up on some US treasuries today, and screw this silver stuff. The inflation's good. I mean, any of the arguments we've heard in the past of, well, aside from, like, people are always worried, is the central bank's going to come out and whack the price again. I mean, we're running out of excuses to even like argue a case against silver.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, again, like, how does the U.S. raise interest rates? How does Canada raise interest rates? Canada did our token little quarter raise, but with what people are going into debt and what's happening, like, you're gonna bankrupt half your country if you start going down that road. You're gonna put their houses underwater. You're gonna, like, it's ridiculous.
quarter point raise before they just confiscate your bank account anyway. Ah,
Yeah.
thanks.
Well, they'll pay for it. There you go. He frees. You have no access to your funds anyways.
Yeah. Make them feel good before we take
Yeah.
everything. You know, give them a little flyer.
Yeah, we're gonna do this raise because we're gonna get control of inflation, and then oh, by the way, yeah, look what's happening in the world.
What about it? At least they give you like a Tim Hortons coffee and a donut before they confiscate, you know, your life savings. I mean, at least.
Even that's been ruined. Tim Hortons got bought out, and they McDonald's coffee is better than Tim Hortons coffee now.
Oh wow! I didn't know. I thought Tim Hortons was
No,
the
Tim
thing
Hortons,
back up
whoever the
in.
parent company is that owns Burger King, bought Tim Hortons a few years ago or a while ago, and they've ran that company into the ground. Most people are quite disgusted with Tim Hortons now.
All right, so I guess I can extrapolate what Justin Trudeau's drinking every day. I mean, that
Yeah.
explains something. But anyway, Steve, uh, it's so mind-boggling what's happening. I'm gonna ask the same exact question another time. Now we've gone through 20 more data points. Again, can you find a way to explain that we're not at the break point? I mean, do you see like silver being $2 or $3 lower a week from now, a month from now? Is that, to me, it's seeming, aside from the
Maybe a
fact of
week.
what I've lived through the last decade, it's seeming harder and harder to like see a way that's possible with what's going on.
I mean, maybe a week from now, but that's just because their last ditch efforts to hold it back, and we don't. Who knows what they're gonna do in the short term that way. But a month from now, 2 months from now, a year from now, not a chance. And with these costs going up, I mean, the scary thing for me is looking at our industry. When it goes to, like you say, trying to replace the reserves and find new mines, is with fuel going up and all these other costs going up, and labor going to have to follow it and go up. It's going to be even harder for the dollars to be allocated towards drilling and that the thing that actually finds and is going to replace these ounces. It's getting so expensive. It has no choice but to go up to make up for that. And like you said, you're already in a shortage of silver and a deficit. So, it has to go up for the producers to keep producing, because their costs are going to go up and their financials aren't going to look as good here coming up in the next couple of quarters if the metals prices don't continue to cooperate and keep moving up. And for the explorers and us that don't, we don't make revenue, we don't make money till we sell our project and get bought out, and then we make our big premium on that front. It's more and more money is going to be allocated to things that aren't drilling. It's or because the cost of drilling is going to go up. I'm sure the drilling companies are going to be begging to get out of their existing contracts at existing sites right now to try and renegotiate, because the drillers won't be making money. They'll start to lose money.
Yeah, real well planned out setup by the government on this one. Although, Steve, we, I guess, on the show we get near this particular point often, but it'd be interesting to hear if you could even venture a guess here. We see the paper price is up a little bit today, still $26, $27, whatever it is, in a hyperinflationary world. Every person, I mean, now I'm like, all right, wow, this is a year from Silver Squeeze. We've been talking about the buying pressure never let up. When the price gets hammered, people are buying more silver. They had to lie about the numbers last Silver Squeeze weekend. They said 116 million ounces went in over 3 days. I, made a big deal about saying it's impossible and brought everyone outside of Santa Claus on in the silver industry to confirm that. Then the LBMA comes out later, says there was a miscount, and says that they were weeks away from running out of silver. So if that was last February and now we're here today, and you just explain that it's not getting easier to find it, the all the costs to go out and dig for it. I mean, by the time whatever happens with it, I mean, I know the stock market somehow is rallying a couple hundred points through all this again today. But let's say even one of these algorithms wakes up and sees, wow, and then you have a stock market crater. I mean, it's not going to be exactly the environment's going to entice an entrepreneur to go out and put his capital at risk in this political and currency environment, with a $26 silver price. And then the last point there, last add on to that, is that I believe you and I, and certainly many others on the show, have talked about, you could raise the prices. Let's say silver goes to $100. Let's say silver goes to $600 today, to next week. Okay. You still have a shortage of silver.
Yeah. And in a world where you've got permitting taking longer and longer in a lot of these jurisdictions, so you, yes, if it goes to 600, there's deposits out there that become, certainly a lot, a few deposits become economic that weren't down here at these prices, but you're still talking about years for permitting on those and building, permitting first, then the time it takes to build a mine before you'd ever even start extracting it. So call it, even from today, maybe a 4 or 5 year cycle to get a lot of those, you know, mediocre to garbage silver deposits that aren't in production going. So I mean, that's a pretty long turnaround time for most to even start replacing some of those ounces.
Yeah, I completely agree, Steve. Although I want to take a step back. What's going to happen in between those 4 and 5 years?
Yeah.
It's like, do we just like our computers, just not as many of them? Or, I guess I would imagine at $600 silver, some of the silver bugs may even be like, all right, I'll cash in a few ounces there. But, when you can't, like, certain parts of life are going to have to change. And I've never really heard, I've never even, I guess I've thought about it a little bit, but you get what I'm saying? Like, what actually happens?
Well, exactly, to your point. What does that? I mean, again, this is this whole idea. And then is that happening at the same time that oil is going to keep doing what it's doing? Because you're going to have all these people
It
right
sure
now
looks like it.
are going to be begging for electric cars. And, what are you going to be able to charge whatever you want for a used electric car if you're willing to sell it? You can't get delivery of new ones. That's going to take, a year, 2 years. So, um, what happens? And the more they try and produce them, the more silver they're using, and it's just going to further that deficit. I don't know what they do. I mean, I don't know what they can't. It doesn't work. The silver doesn't exist to make it work. Like I said, like you get a reprieve there as, like you say, the silver bugs blow off some of their silver because it's skyrocketed, and they want to retire off of that. The ones that have been around for decades and hoarding their silver. But yeah, it's a scary it's a scary proposition.
Yeah, I would think so. Especially because you ask, is the price of silver going to be sky or oil going to be high? As you're saying that, something about Poland's ready to transfer him in 29 planes, which doesn't sound like that's de-escalating right now. Although here's another one just popped up, Steve. Actually, this is going to upset some people. I'll leave my personal thoughts aside from this, but at least Zero Hedge with the headline. Where did it go there? Coinbase cuts off 25,000 Russian wallets over allegations they're engaged in illicit activity. Now, again, I'm not going to get into silver versus cryptos. I mean, I think they're different things, but to the degree, and I know sometimes people say it's the exchanges versus this and that, but it sounds to me like even if you have cryptos, there's a new risk that, all right, today it's for the Russians, but what if Joe Biden decides he doesn't like cryptos tomorrow, or that what if he fears cryptos were developed in Russia, or if he has a meeting with Justin Trudeau and they find someone used a crypto while he was thinking about a truck, and they say like, well, we're going to shut down all these so you can have your cryptos, but you can't cash it at the same time where you have to have a I mean, I haven't been in the US in almost a year, but I mean, the reports I hear from New York, it's like you can't buy food unless you have the vaccine. Or what if, we're seeing a really scary set of circumstances. And if you have any comment on any of that, fine. But more to the point of silver, fortunately, like, silver hasn't changed since yesterday, but when you add in all these changes, I mean, silver looking even better by comparison.
Agreed. Yeah, and I can briefly comment on it. Just what I saw in Canada during the trucker rally was crypto scared the government. That was one of the things they saw as soon as they started, like you say, freezing accounts, based on the donations that were coming in the regular way. They said, "Oh, well, you can't block us if we go to cryptos." And that was, the government instantly was like, "Whoa, yeah, well, we're gonna figure out how." And they started work on that in Canada, saying that no, it was, they tried to say it's illegal to send bitcoins to people, and they would still freeze the accounts if they could. But did that drive people to cash out their cryptos for cash directly and then flip it into, maybe they were buying silver? Who knows? But no, I mean, the governments don't like cryptos. I mean, it's tack on their own currency. Essentially, it's a competing vehicle. I don't think it's what people originally said. I don't think it's the, replacing gold and silver and what it does. It's a different product, but it's certainly been popular. And if Russia and China continue to do what they're doing, at one point China was, I think, mining 80% of the bitcoins at one point. So again, that's another battle between the West and those powers as they struggle to find out who's going to be the world power and control everything that's going on. It's like, it's a scary place. This world is going, what's happened over the last couple of months and what's changing on a daily basis is it's quite scary what's going on.
Yeah, which, I guess on one hand, there's certain days where I struggle handling all that. And then there is something nice about this when you come out to the other side and you're like, wow, well, we're fucking in it. Yeah, let's go. I mean, let's, not worry about some other stuff so much. And again, to your point there, Steve, and I'm already like hearing in my head like some crypto people explaining, well, there's this technicality and maybe the headline is or isn't completely accurate in the full technological parameters of what is or is not being blocked. But Steve, I would suggest, and I think you might agree, given that you're interacting with silver investors all day as part of your job, that sometimes whether things are even factually true or not, people see the headlines, they get affected by the subliminals. Maybe they just see other people worrying, that affects their decisions. And maybe to put that in context, I had some cryptos that I had since 2017, and there were a few projects that I believed in, and I didn't have a lot, but there was, for example, there's one I bought, I don't know, it was like 7,000 of them for like 10 cents. Yeah, it was like I spent $700, and then one point it went to like $10. So I'm like, oh wow, and I still don't even know what the damn thing was. But these two cryptos where they had gone up quite a bit, it was so hard to figure out just how to actually sell the thing when I wanted to. In fact, the one that went from 10 cents to $14, I still haven't been able to figure out how to sell the damn thing. So, and I'm not saying I'm a crypto expert, but I do have a background as an option market maker. So I'm around that type of technology. And that scared me that I had something that I still believe in the underlying project, but how difficult, I go to ask people what's the right exchange to use. I go there and it'll be down, or there'll be some feature that's not working. I'm not saying the blockchain isn't a good idea, but this isn't like up and operational and humming along right now. Now you tack on, that you have the risk that, well, the governor, now if they decide they don't like it, I mean, these were the things we always worried about. And that's why, they can come in different ways, and not that, and hey, look, I'm not saying anything is safe. Digital silver might not be safe, paper silver. And, even if you have $10 million of silver in your car, that's probably not so safe either. But to the degree that, people are really being put on the spot to be careful with where they're putting their value right now. I mean, almost everything's being destroyed except, it's like silver. I'll take my chances if they try and confiscate it, versus the stuff I see happening with a lot of other asset classes.
Yeah. Well, I agree. I mean, I think like we mentioned, earlier in this multiple times, is our way at that breaking point. And I think to that point, we certainly are there. Is silver is so primed for a breakout, and there's so much going on. And, like you say, I think a lot of that crypto crowd has been shaken a bit with this pullback and, what they're starting to read and headlines. And the fact is, most people only read the headline and don't actually do any due diligence or read the article. Or if they read the article, they don't go and certainly look at what's behind the article. But, that's what drove this whole COVID thing. It's just people believe what they read, or a large portion of people do. And that's how we get control of people. You've seen it. It's like psychology 101, what's gone on in the world over all these different things. So I don't know. I mean, I think you say the summary of that is that silver is in a very, very good spot. I think it is certainly ready, and it needs to break out, because if it doesn't, with all the costs rising, you're going to see, that deficit grow dramatically, here over the coming months.
I certainly agree. And Steve, I'll put the disclaimer, by all means, you're not giving licensed financial advice, but just in your opinion, and if you care to answer this one, do you think this is really the last chance that we'll be able to get physical silver anywhere around these prices?
I, you know, I mean, I guess my belief, and I guess we've been saying it for years, but every day that you're not investing, you're one day to missing out on the big run up here in silver. And I think we are very, very close to that run up coming. So, without saying bye, if people that are listening to this are obviously most are silver bugs and they know the fundamentals and they know what's around. And what's going on in the world right now, and with price rising in this new, we've been in inflation and we've always argued that have lots of inflation, but now it is that curve is steepening dramatically on a daily basis, and you need to see, silver and gold both need to go up and go up in a dramatic way here moving forward. So I certainly think $26 silver, or 27, depending how much it's rebounded as we've been talking here, but those need to be a lot higher and will be a lot higher moving forward.
Yeah, I agree. And one thing that, just as you were mentioning, I had the gold chart pulled up, and I don't know if other people look at it like this, and not necessarily that's a right or not way to do so. But one thing I keep thinking is that, all right, if gold goes under 2,000 bucks, and it goes to 1950 and then 1925, maybe I would look at where silver is in its price cycle a little bit differently. But yeah, silver is down from its high today, but gold is down from, $2,070, whereas right now it's $2,044. Still just busted up $44 through that $2,000 mark. And again, to the degree, as you said, there's a lot of psychology in these things. And as long as there's enough pressure to keep gold above 2,000 bucks, then it's like, all right, maybe silver, didn't, have as big a day as it could of today, but at least, and again, also not financial advice, when I think of the different times, all right, I have capital. Do I want to add more now? Do I think maybe it's a time to be patient or to be more aggressive? Those are some of the things that I look at that I find helpful. And then you add on what's happening in the world, and that also does its thing. Does that make sense? Any thoughts on that, or perhaps any other things from your investment or mining perspective that help you when you're making decisions like that?
Yeah, I mean, again, we've said silver important number is 30, and when gold was last up testing its high, silver was testing that high, and it hasn't gotten to that point yet. In the last couple of days, rebounding where gold has broken through everything. So I think that you say a breaking point, I would expect that silver is certainly going to test that 26 or the $30 number here very shortly. And if it breaks through that and sustains it, then look out, because it should run quite a bit. I don't know. There's lots going on. I mean, if you're not just talking about the physical metal, if you want, again, risk profile, if you want to invest in, depending where you want to sit in, but I think, investing in the producers is a good choice right now. I think, and then as you trickle down and get to companies our size, it's a good choice, because you're going to see, we'll outperform the metals prices for sure as they move up.
Yeah, actually, I'm glad you mentioned that. Especially because the silver miners yesterday were on fire. I mean, they were hot as if Ross Benham was in there with a burglar mask in a bank heist or something. And especially even after the silver price got whacked down yesterday, I was surprised to see how the miners had reacted strongly. Again today, even through the ups and downs, the miners in the silver sector performing quite strongly 2 days in a row, if you can believe that. Although, with all that said, Steve, I have an account I manage for my mom, and just because it's a metric that helps, rough gauge of, well, all right, they were up 2 days in a row, but they've been pounded pretty thoroughly for the last couple of months before that. I mean, we're still incredibly low. I mean, you have today and yesterday, and I mean, some of these stocks, even to get back to their highs of last year, even after things got hammered after silver squeeze, Silvercrest was like an $8 stock. First Majestic had 25 bucks last year during silver squeeze. It's like $11, $12 today or whatever it is. I mean, there's still, in my mind, a lot, I mean, I'm not cashing out I'm not even thinking about that. Um, so, I mean, for some people who might be saying, oh, well, now that it's up a bit, obviously the price is higher than yesterday, but again, not giving any direct advice to people, but just as someone who's done this for a while, how do you approach factoring that in?
Well, I mean, again, it's risk profile, but yes, those producers, when you've seen like good bull markets and longer term runs in our sector, those companies are gonna, they're gonna certainly get back to those previous highs and then break through them. They have to. It's part of, inflation affects this side of things as well. you know, um, but I mean, so we call them silver producers, but a lot of them aren't even silver. They're not even primary silver producers anymore. I mean, like Pan American Silver, second largest silver producer in the world, 70% of their production is in gold. Because again, which I think speaks to some of that other stuff about how hard it is to find silver, and that they've gone. A lot of these companies are relying on having exposure to both, and then on top of those, the base metals as well. But which I think you would argue that a lot of those producers are going up more so on gold price moving right now than the silver price and what it's moved. I really think you want to see silver break through that $30 number, and then those companies that have the high silver exposure will get the big percentage gains on that front. But they're all everyone in our sector is good, bad, producer, junior, developer. They're all heavily undervalued right now from that time frame. I mean, we were all running at highs last May, and then the summer doldrums hit, and everyone was fed up with COVID and went on holidays, and everything traded down on very low volumes. And we've been slowly rebounding, but we're still not even close. Across the board for most companies being back up to where their highs were from that time frame.
Yep, it sure does seem to be the case. And Steve, as you know, you and I have talked about privately before. I won't share any secrets here, but I think for reasons that you're aware of, and then I've talked a little bit on the show, when silver goes through 30 and stays through 30, I mean, if it's at like 32, 33, 34, and a week goes by, in addition to that opening up the floodgates into the mining sector, I think that means we're very close to the financial reset, more overtly occurring. Um, because Steve, like you said, it's a great point that I was just thinking about earlier today and yesterday. On Sunday night, if gold and silver had gone up a bit, yeah, the miners are going to go up, but it seems to me like the day where fund managers on Wall Street or in Europe are saying, "Oh, wow, well, now we really better get to the mining stocks." I felt like, we were still a couple steps away, although maybe today being one of those steps with like gold going through 2000, because it's still like just going to take more public awareness or shock before they really start piling into the mining stocks, which is, again, just as I'm thinking, how do you, to any degree that you're managing or doing money management on some of these things, does that make sense that even as much as we've seen these couple of days, like, what's going to happen to like an Alexco or one of these stocks, one of these small ones that, is liquid and bigger. But I mean, you try and pump like a couple $1 billion into there because you're just like, all right, we got to sell any of these treasuries we can get
Yeah.
for anything we can get. And treasury market also being absolutely destroyed on Tuesday.
We haven't seen it yet. I mean, we haven't seen. We've our sector is so small. Yes, there are the primary gold and silver funds, and they, for the most part, their capital is pretty tied up. They should start to see some inflows and get some here with metals prices moving. But the story has been there hasn't been enough M&A yet. They haven't been able to get liquidity in the funds. So they've been mostly tapped out. Where we get the big moves coming in is when the generalist funds that for the like you say for the most part have ignored gold and silver. They briefly came in and out a couple times during COVID, but they were petrified as soon as the silver or gold price would move down like $1 or $10. They seem to want to liquidate everything they just invested in. But it's when those generalist funds come in and start pouring in, billions of dollars into the space. There's not a lot of places for it to go, and that'll be the sign that investors should look at, and maybe that's what we're seeing the last couple of days when you're seeing those producers start to go up, because the first, companies that benefit from it are the large producers, is when they're going up, even when gold and silver are down on a day or not performing well. And that's probably a pretty good sign that the generalist investors are starting to pour their money in, and that'll trickle down, and it'll, that's another one where everyone, like you say, if you're a good company, a garbage company, bad management, good management, they're all going to benefit from those funds coming in, because people are just going to look and say, okay, this has moved, what hasn't moved yet, and then a bunch of money will pour into that, and you're going to rise the whole ship together. The best companies will outperform the bad companies, but everyone's going to go up. So it's, again, I mean, you can put your money wherever you want in this space right now. And if our metals prices are going to perform the way they think they are, and funds are going to start pouring back in, everyone's going to do really well on their investments.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll tell you what, today may well be day one, because right now at this moment, the stock markets are basically almost exactly flat, and like fraction of a percentage point up or down. Yet I said the bond market was getting clobbered. I mean, holy Christ. US 10-year up 11.6 basis points. The yield has risen 11.6 basis points to 1.86. So it was 1.75 yesterday. It's 1.866 now. And Steve, I think you're familiar with the bond market enough to know that's a pretty darn big move right there, right?
Yeah.
But to put it in context, how thoroughly the bond market is getting clobbered, the German Bund went positive today. You're not going to believe this. The yield on the German 10-year Bund is 0.133, but the yield is up 0.143. It went from like a fraction negative to now 0.133, because it's up 0.143. And you would think some of that money might start be going into, I'll bet some people got concerned, sold some treasuries today and bought some gold, or bought some silver, or bought some gold and silver miners. Not to say that was the dominant trend, but I think a few eyes had to be open today. And it's interesting. Again, even looking at the silver miners now, some of them are still up quite a bit. Some of them are down. Although, Steve, if I may, humbly, playfully brag for just a quick moment here. I don't know if you saw my video about the Endeavor 5 strike, where I said, you're going to start seeing some movement around some of these once they go through strikes where there's active option activity. And sure enough, Endeavor flying through the 5 strike today, up 5 or 6%. And it's interesting to see some of them also down. And I'm sure there's just a lot of chaos. And perhaps maybe before we just wrap up with some updates about Silver Viper, I think it's helpful for people to keep in mind, like, don't expect, this happened, so this is going to go up this amount, that's going to go down this amount. There's going to be lots of chaos mixed in. So often it's a balance of, keeping an eye on things, but not over trading, and, have whatever you're going to leave, just leave there, and have a balance to all of this. Does that sound about right?
You should definitely have a balance. Don't put your mortgage all in on one thing or one sector, I guess. So, I mean, again, you need to be balanced. You need to be smart about it. If you're going to play in, the junior space, for sure, it should be long hold investments. You shouldn't be sitting in there trying to trade these things. Most of them are too illiquid to do that. And, you're investing in these for the big wins. So ride the train, be part of, the discoveries, and be part of, growing these companies. They're, like you say, you're in our size, we're looking for discoveries and trying to make, new projects for the majors to buy. Or if you're in it for, the production side of it and seeing a company grow, or the developers that are building a new mine, like, just invest your money, let it sit there, be patient. Go day trade some of the other sectors that are much larger than ours if you want to work on some of those things, if you want to do that. But I think certainly everyone should have probably a much larger percentage of their portfolio allocated to precious metals than most do right now.
Well, I agree. And I was wondering how I was mentally wondering how my allocation would break down. I'm pretty proud of my diversification, because I have a lot of different silver mining options, different months, strikes, companies. I have silver mining shares. I have a lot of silver bullion. I have a couple 1,000-ounce blocks. that also have some like cool collector coins, and I also have a business that's based on silver. So that's really a nice diversification there, Steve. Am I hitting the mark? Although I can play the guitar and piano without silver, I guess it might still sound all right if I wasn't wearing any silver at the time. So maybe that's a little diversification. I have Silver Viper shares, and maybe before we wrap up, you could give folks an update of what you guys have been going on. Obviously, we do have a lot of Silver Viper fans in our audience, and some of our analysts as well. So, what could you say is the latest with Silver Viper?
Yeah, we've been very patient as a company waiting for geophysics, and I'm proud to say that it actually started yesterday. So that's going to take about 40 days to run our geophysics program, and then we're going to follow that up with testing our Ruby discovery at depth and trying to prove up this beast of a system that Quentin Hennig and Crescat certainly thought we were onto, and testing that deeper contact, and then also expanding on the El Ruby pit as we move north. It's a pretty exciting time, and we've been waiting for this since August, and it's been hard for our third party geophysics company to get their gear in, but we finally got it. It's on site, and I'm happy to say that they started doing the geophysics lines yesterday. So we're very happy with that as a company, and looking forward to finally testing El Ruby at depth. In the interim, we've been testing one of our regional targets, and we'll be testing more moving forward.
Well, I think that's something that we can all give Silver Chopper Ben's propellers a spin too. Wait.
I can
I'm
hear
gonna
it.
edit this, Steve. So I had it so timed nicely. Wait, I'm gonna get a good one here. Come on, there we go. So yeah, I appreciate that, and again, obviously, I'm a little bit biased here, and certainly everyone be aware, Silver Viper is a sponsor to the show, although I like to think that we choose those quite carefully as well. But aside even from the project and the, any particular grams per ton or drill results, I just think if people just, whether it's silver companies or anything, I mean, look at the stuff the president, and this isn't Democrats, Republicans, look at what Joe Biden's saying, look at what George Bush promised, look what any of these guys did. And then, certainly folks are welcome to, and I think that's one of the advantages. Steve, you've been on the show how many ever times since in the last year? People can go back and see, do you follow through with the things you said? Are you moving the project forward? Is it consistent versus, that's why it was so refreshing to me to find silver, because otherwise you look in corporate America and these tech companies or any of these governments or any of these banks. And again, make your own investment decisions. I can't offer legal advice on that, but just something that, when you don't get caught up in the latest short-term mania too much, and you go back to your fundamentals, maybe get your ass kicked in a silver bear market for a decade. But if you live to the other side, your life ends up being a lot better. Some really cool people, and you still have the ability to have your value and purchasing power. And I know some people talk about maintaining it, and I personally think it's going to go really well in a whole variety of manners, and perhaps just the experience that we've all gone through in this past decade, and to have ended up in this place, certainly not always easy, but I feel grateful for all that's happened and how it's developed me as a person. And I think that's been similar for you, Steve. Certainly quite accomplished in your own career. And any final thoughts on any of that or anything else before we wrap up today?
No, like I said, we've said it a number of times. It's a crazy world that we're in, but I think it is, one of these. Certainly, I won't want to say once in a lifetime, but once in every couple decades, when we get to this point in bull markets, where our industry is primed for massive breakouts, and when you do get into one of these and you get to ride the wave up over a few years when the prices skyrocket, there is a lot of wealth to be made in our sector. And I'm excited for not only my own investments, but everyone that's listening and that have gotten excited about silver and put their money into the sector. And I think we're all in for quite the run here. I don't know what's going to happen in the rest of the world while that all happens, but we should make a ton of money off of our investments into precious metals. So, I mean, with that, everyone keep up the hope, keep investing, and if you have any questions about anything Silver Viper related or the sector, we're always available, and shoot an email to the company or pick up the phone and give us a call. We're always happy to chat.
Sure. And Steve, one more time, the website address, especially for German investors who now see the Bund in positive yielding territory.
The website's www.silverviperminerals.com, and you can send emails to info@silverviperminerals.com.
All right. Well, I sure appreciate that, Steve. Great catching up with you as always. And will be fun to enjoy some of the things that are happening now going forward, whichever day it goes to whatever level someone's hoping for. But I think we're finally here. So congratulations to all that you've overcome. And thank you so much for being a part of what we're doing.
Thank you for doing what you do, Chris. It's always a pleasure.